One more country has joined the race to develop a sixth-generation fighter jet. It's Japan. They're already talking about stealth technologies, laser guidance, super weapons, and all the attributes of the future aircraft that are amazing. Although Japan is traditionally known for its technology and technological achievements, microcomputers, CDs, 3D printing, and even karaoke, the Japanese have lagged behind the world's superpowers in the military sphere until recently. To understand why this is the case, we need to get a little closer to history. After the Second World War, under pressure from the United States, Tokyo adopted a pacifist constitution in 1947 that prohibited Japan from waging offensive war and having armed forces. According to Article 9 of the Constitution, Japan has not had an army for 75 years. That's why the Japanese army is now called the Self-Defense Forces and exists in a gray area. The Japanese military are civilian employees. However, nowadays the Self-Defense Forces number 250,000 people, and the military budget amounted to a record $53.8 billion last year. In the world military power ranking, Japan is in 5th position. America is now giving the green light for further militarization of Japan because of the rise of China and Russia in the Pacific. Tokyo becomes the leader of the U.S. anti-China coalition in Asia. This cooperation began in 1952 when Japan and the United States signed the so-called Administrative Agreement on the conditions for the deployment of American forces on Japanese territory. This security treaty formalized the creation of the Japan-US military alliance. Since then, Japan has mostly been buying weapons from the United States, but it has not given up hope of creating its own. First of all, this concerns the air component. In 2008, Japan announced the launch of a program to develop a fifth-generation fighter jet. The project arose out of the country's desire to buy F-22 fighters, but the United States passed laws prohibiting the export of F-22s to other countries. To add a fifth-generation fighter to their arsenal, the Japanese decided to develop their own. The first Japanese stealth fighter was named Mitsubishi X-2 Shinshin. The X-2 is a stealth fighter developed by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries to test new aviation technologies. With more than 220 companies involved in the development and 90% of the components produced domestically, the X-2 has been dubbed Shinshin, which translates to the embodiment of Japan. This model looks like a 9-ton machine almost 50 feet long with one pilot. The cost of its development was $400 million, which is a small amount for a fifth-generation fighter but exorbitant for the first known prototype. Therefore, the question of how many of them the Japanese have is still open. These fighters have fly-by-wire control systems using fiber optics, which transmit data faster and are resistant to electromagnetic attacks. The X-2 also boasts a self-healing control system that detects damage to the aircraft's control surfaces and automatically adjusts the handling. Contrary to predictions of mass production, the X-2 was designed only for experimental use, providing the necessary data for future fighters, and has never been intended for mass production. This is confirmed by the absence of weapons on board the Shinshin. However, even such an achievement is impossible without the engineering experience that the Japanese gained from the United States and the USSR. Yes, the USSR by chance transferred its advanced technologies to the United States and Japan. In September 2023, former Soviet pilot Viktor Belenko died. He was known for fleeing to Japan in a MiG-25 in 1976 and being granted asylum in the United States, where he lived for the rest of his life. During a training mission over the Sea of Japan, Lieutenant Viktor Belenko hijacked a Soviet MiG-25 aircraft, landed on the Japanese island of Hokkaido, and sought political asylum. According to him, this decision was due to the fact that he lacked freedom in the USSR. The pilot was able to fool the radar by flying at an ultra-low altitude. The Soviet military contacted the Japanese Air Force to intercept the fugitive, but as soon as they began to pursue him, he disappeared from the radar again. In November 1976, after tense negotiations, the aircraft was returned to the Soviet Union in its disassembled form in 30 boxes. Obviously, the aircraft was examined to the last detail, and for good reason. The MiG-25 is still the fastest combat aircraft in the world, capable of flying almost 3 times faster than sound. Its development began in the late 1950s in response to the American development of several designs for combat aircraft with speeds close to Mach 3. It is armed with 4 air-to-air missiles, 2 missiles with thermal homing heads and 2 with radar homing heads. If necessary, they could strike ground targets from an altitude of 65,660 feet and a range of several tens of miles. During its design, many problems had to be solved, for example the so-called thermal barrier. At speeds above Mach 2.5, the surface of the aircraft heated up, and conventional duralumin lost its strength. Therefore, stainless steel and titanium alloys became the main construction materials for the new model. The MiG-25 special variant set 29 world records, including an absolute altitude record of 23,500 feet. Of course, Japan and the United States had already mastered Soviet technologies and used them in future developments. Another technological example for Japan was the F-35. In 2020, the United States and Japan signed an agreement to supply 105 fifth-generation F-35 fighters, engines, electronic warfare systems, communications, and related services. The total value of the deal between Washington and Tokyo is estimated at $23 billion. This agreement brought the Japanese Air Force to the second position in the world after the United States in terms of the number of fifth-generation aircraft, amounting to 147 units. The distribution of F-35 types ordered by the Japanese Self-Defense Forces is also interesting. 63 aircraft in the F-35A land-based version and 42 F-35B vertical landing fighters. The F-35 is the most versatile fighter jet ever built. In 2001, the F-35 prototype, the X-35, was named the winner of the Joint Strike Fighter competition, designed to find a replacement for several aircraft, including the F-16 fighter jet, the low-altitude A-10 and the vertical takeoff Harrier jet. Thus, the F-35 is truly versatile. In the U.S. Army, it's designed to carry out bombing missions, support ground troops, and engage in air combat, and it has a significant amount of weapon carrying and payload capability. In theory, the versatility of the F-35 should change the rules of modern combat, but some analysts are skeptical of this concept. However, its technical characteristics are impressive. For example, F-35 helmets allow pilots to see through the aircraft. Visibility has always been a problem in fighter jets. Previous generations of fighter jets had multiple screens showing real-time images from 4 different angles. However, a specially equipped F-35 helmet, costing $400,000, shows real-time images from infrared cameras throughout the aircraft on a seamless augmented reality display, effectively allowing the pilot to see right through his own aircraft.